Welcome to Biztech's Enterprise Technology Show, the show where we feature technology companies across Asia talking about their solutions and how they make a difference in the tech enterprise space. Now, today we feature Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise, a French software company headquartered in Columbus, France, providing enterprise communication services in over 100 countries around the world. Now, here to tell us more particularly about their business in the Asia-Pacific region is Pierre Samson, Senior Vice President, Asia-Pacific at Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise. Welcome to the show, Pierre.
Hi, Brian. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I appreciate our time together.
Now, thanks for being on the show. Give us an overview for a start of what Alcatel-Lucent Enterprises does across the region.
Yes, sure. So a few words about AlcatelLucent Enterprise and myself. So I have 16 years of sales experience and sales leadership experience, helping large enterprises to digitally transform. I'm currently in my 5th year in this role, leading the charge to grow the business in Asia-Pac, based out of Singapore, where I live with my family. So what does AlcatelLucent Enterprise is doing? Interestingly, not everybody knows this precisely. One of the reasons is we are a very experienced startup with over 100 years of innovation history. It all started in the Alsace region of France, in the northeast part of France, when Aaron Vail created a company called Le Téléphone Privé, private telephone. And from there, it grew into a global communication powerhouse. In 2014, the company is split into 2 companies, Alcatel-Lucent, now operating under Nokia, and AlcatelLucent Enterprise. AlcatelLucent Enterprise is a world's leading communication, networking, and cloud solutions. We offer a solution with flexible business model, on-premises, in the cloud, and in hybrid environments, where our technology connects everything and everyone. We specialize in industry-specific solutions to provide business outcomes to relevant use cases in public and smart cities, public sector and smart cities, education, healthcare, transportation, and hospitality. We serve 1 million customers across the world, where from over 100 countries. We're based, as you mentioned, in France with our HQ. And we serve all those customers as an indirect vendor through a community of 3,400 loyal partners. Locally here, our HQ is in Singapore, in the APAC region, and we have a couple of decades in presence in most Asia-Pac countries.
Now, Pierre, to help people understand how your products and services are used, walk us through some of the use cases of how customers in the region use your solutions.
All right, so we have, as I said, specific industry solutions. So one typical example would be here locally. In Malaysia or Singapore, we provide some infrastructure to MRT. And our infrastructure, I would say, has two benefits. One is that we have specific hardware switches, which are designed fit for purpose to fit well into those environments, meaning high conditions of pressure, temperature, and depth. So this is fanless switches, ruggedized. And also, more importantly, we have a specific architecture, shortest path bridging, which is very well fitted to those IoT environments where we connect actually many of the sensors, devices, and control systems, and we can provision them and onboard them in an automated way and a secure manner.
Okay, could you tell us a little bit? So that's a transportation solution. How about some of your solutions in government, and you've got education and healthcare as well?
Yeah. So another example I like a lot because it's a combination of several verticals at once, is where the Olympic Games happen right now, right? So in the North Province of Japan, in Hokkaido, where basically it's government initiatives that want to basically offer a more inclusive society and tackle the issues of the elderly, the great tsunami, many elderly population. So in all those rural areas where we have a lot of elder citizens, They offer a kind of digital package, so fiber to the home, to allow people basically to stay in their home and in their residence while not being away and not benefiting from all the public services. So you got fiber to the home and all the digital access where AlcatelLucent Enterprise contributes to with our partners by offering typical large headset devices with a very large screen and a keyboard designed for elderly people. It's fully integrated in the communication platform and services of the government and the partners, thanks to our communication platform, which we call Rainbow, that is easily integrated in Android platform with open API policies. And with that, the citizen can access to many of the public services through their phone, through the tablets. They can receive some services like radio, and also it's a way for the government to provide public safety because they can broadcast as well alerts for tsunami, for instance, to all the households at once. And we talk about hundreds of thousands of residents in Hokkaido and Japan-wise, and it's scaling up.
Now, Pierre, I want to ask you about COVID-19. So for companies like Alcatel-Lucent Enterprises, this has been a game changer in terms of acceleration of adoption. Tell us how this has impacted your business in the last 12 to 15 months.
Yeah. So I'm smiling because I always think about this cartoon, you know, where you have what was the driving force behind your accelerated digital transformation roadmap, and you have number one, your consumer or your users, number two, CEO, number three, your CIO. And the box is ticked with COVID, right? It's been the biggest driving forces to accelerate the digital transformation. For us, we see obviously the trend differed in the different sectors. I think on the software part of the business, the cloud part of the business, it's been a very strong headwinds. It has created a way to consume. It has been for us the opportunity to accompany our customers that from day one had to shift to not from work to the home environment. And we could have, for instance, we have some solution with softphony for install base, people that want the exactly same feature, the rich telephony system and headsets they have at home that we can directly transport to a laptop. So this has been a way we could accompany our customers. And you had some other projects which were very critical in the infrastructure, where the cycle require strong investments and CapEx expenditures. And this, you had different approaches, right? On one hand of the spectrum, you had the healthcare has accelerated some of its investment to create small campus healthcare facilities and expansion. And you had other customers that had to defer the investment, and the most notorious one being obviously hospitality, who had to defer some of those investments. So that was 2020. And in 2021, we can start to see a strong rebound on those customers that had to defer. But obviously, it's not a one-size-fits-all. Depending on the countries and the verticals, you have different cycles.
Now, one of the things is also the increased awareness in this part of the world in terms of Industry 4.0. How has this impacted the adoption of Internet of Things technology or IoT?
Yeah, I think when it comes to the Internet of Things, likewise, I would say, like the digital transformation, it has been rather a tailwind than a headwind for most businesses. Again, you had a few sectors that have been the exception. So typically in the transportation and logistics, the air freight monitoring or connections of platform in the oil industry have slowed down. But in many industries, it has accelerated. And one of the main reasons, I think it's because one of the benefits of IoT technologies and platforms is to offer a better business continuity and resiliency. Because when you have fully deployed it, you have machine talking to machines, you can control in an automated way. And so you're not as reliant on sending people on site to do your operation and continue your operations. So I think this is one of the driving force. And not surprisingly, this is why we see, by the way, with COVID, in Asia Pac, the adoption of IoT has been one of the greatest the impact of COVID on the willingness of people to adopt IoT has been stronger in this region as opposed to Europe and the US.
Now, can you give us an example of some innovative applications or implementations that you have done in IoT for enterprises in Asia?
Yeah, so I think we have plenty of use cases, but I think one of the I can start by the one of the biggest planning here, which is around the public sector and smart cities, which represent a third basically of the IoT spending in the region. When you basically you combine two things, right, with IoT. Is first, all the sensors and devices collect the data. Data is the new oil. So you have the capacity to collect data at scale. And then if you, with the right analytics, you can analyze the data and allow public officials to better connect citizen, public entity, increase the safety of the citizen. So here we can think about the example I was mentioning around the MRT, because you can track everything from anomalies in light rail, train speeds, roadway temperatures. We have also example of highways where we detect so not in this part of the globe, but in the US, where we detect the temperature and sensors and can adapt interventions, the real-time location of mass buses. And as mentioned, also very importantly, the performance and maintenance with productivity at stake. And finally, the public safety, which I mentioned in the example of what we've done in Japan, Hokkaido.
Okay, and how has this, because a lot of times there is a criticism of technology being adoption of technology rather as adoption of technology for technology's sake. Can you give us some quantifiable numbers in terms of these clients saving money, being more efficient, or making more money because of all these adoptions?
Okay, I think I have a few numbers. Let me check, because I have even, I think, example in Singapore. Yeah, so overall, yeah, the benefits, and I will give you the numbers. It's been business continuity and resilience, which has always been there, and I think have been magnified by COVID impact as one of the strongest benefits. The second one, obviously, is the productivity as well. If you have a better predictive maintenance capacity to detect the incidents before they happen, you will save obviously some costs. And last but not least, I think there's also the innovation and business impact, and I think we can come back to that later. But in Singapore, out of those top benefits for all the companies that have been implementing IoT solutions, their feedback is that they've improved productivity for 60% of those companies. Mm-hmm. They've reduced operating costs for 52%. And on this, on three-quarters, ballpark number, three-quarters of the IoT adopters in terms of reducing the operating costs, to your question, Brian, have reduced cost by 33%. Okay. So that's the order of magnitude. And last but not least, I want to last one figure, which is very interesting, because we think a lot about the impact on the bottom line and saving costs. But also those same customers in Singapore have reported an improvement in their existing revenue streams of 36%, and a creation of new revenue streams for 25% of them. So it's also important to see it as an impact, potential impact in generating new revenue streams, which is very important, and why IoT is so much gaining traction.
Yeah, and I think, Pierre, that's a very good point, because a lot of people forget the fact that these technologies enable the creation of new products, new services, and new opportunities that didn't exist before. So a lot of times people tend to be just focused on the savings rather than the revenue generating potential of a lot of these technologies. Now, what advice would you give business leaders before they embark on a wide-scale IoT deployment?
Yeah, so as you said, there is an impact on the top line. So I think today, overall, we see a lot of risk, and we'll come back to this, because you need to take into account the risk, you need to strategize, but you must go for it because the innovation is there. And if you're not innovating, your competitors will do, and you take a bigger risk of being disrupted. So I think, interestingly, and to your point, it does not appear that the technology issues are the biggest roadblocks to the IoT. Often, there will be more the lack of clarity around the outcomes, the business impacts, and other operational factors such as the budget or the financial constraints. And for me, the recommendation around this organizational issue is to work with a project approach, a POC approach as well. You need to nail it before you scale it, right? So trying to find the right use cases, bringing the right multidisciplinary teams as well, because to have a holistic view with your own teams from industrial environments, from your IT experts, from guys designing the business case and impacting the top line, how to monetize the innovations. And obviously, last but not least, you need to address the technological issues that I'm happy to expand about.
Now, I want to zoom out a little bit and look at a completely different issue, cybersecurity and cyber defense, which is really something that is top of mind of CIOs and governments across the region. What are the key challenges facing large enterprises in the Asia-Pacific region in these areas?
Yeah, that's very, I mean, basically around cybersecurity, it's been there and it keeps increasing. One of the simple reasons, so IoT is part and parcel of the topic, but you have many different areas. That's because every business is becoming digital, right? Even the simplest, most conservative brick and mortar business, think of your restaurant or your barber. You can think what's digital there, but think about Google reviews and TripAdvisor, and actually there's an impact of digital even in the most conservative business. Yeah. So every business has some digital asset is connected to the internet in one way or another. So that's a potential attack surface. And the explosion of IoT devices is another great example where we just extend the attack surface, the perimeter of the enterprise at scale. So some of the main threats that you can read every day. So you got ransomware today that are targeting and paralyzing the enterprises. One of the reasons why there's this explosion, first, it's simple. Second, beyond IoT, there's another trend, which is obvious, which is we all working from home, where same thing, the perimeter of the company digital assets and properties has extended extremely. So the job of a CISO today and a CIO is extremely difficult because basically this is an asymmetric war. So it's the advice there has always been the same, I think, in the cybersecurity environment, is there's no bulletproof solution. You can't protect everything, even spending countless money. So you have to make the right level of protection according to the business risk that you need. And that's a C-level decision that can make the trade-off between what's the level of defense we put in place associated with the business risk. And it can vary a lot depending on the industry you're in, the size of companies, and how much likely you are to be targeted.
Now, how about governments itself? Because one of the things that has suddenly come into the forefront in the last couple of years is the issue of governments and armed forces facing cybersecurity, but then cyber warfare, disruption of communications, defense countermeasures, industrial espionage. Are you involved in any sort of those sort of areas? Because communication is a vital part of all these areas. Is AlcatelLucent involved in any of these things?
Okay, so I would say a two-pronged answer. The first one, to your question, we provide a lot of, so what we do provide is sometimes critical infrastructure, so networking, communication equipment. It's core part of the DNA to focus on what we do best, providing this secured infrastructure with a lot of respect on privacy. For instance, as a European company, GDPR, the hosting and sovereignty of the data. So that sometimes this cyber warfare environment is a good tailwind for us because we have the ability to say that compared to WhatsApp WhatsApp or other WeChat application coming from the consumer market, whose own business model is to use and take advantage of the data of the customers. That's not a business model. We just provide a very strong, secured solution. Yeah. So we do equip a lot of customer, and we do have a multi-security layer approach to in our networking environments, especially in IoT environments, that protects well our customer and segregate things and help them in their security posture. So that's our approach to governments and what we provide to them. Now I would say on the first part of your question about this explosion of cyber warfare and espionage and intel, I think it has always been there. That's intelligence. And that's part of the asymmetrical war, right? Because you can conduct these operations. Some very advanced countries and nations have the capacity to identify where the attack is coming from, and the groups, the cyber criminals, which are often very professional, not necessarily state-sponsored, but just people that you can buy services from. So most advanced nations have the capacity to identify. Not all, by the way, will finger point at where the threat comes from. And sometimes, like in espionage, you can also be victim of your closest allies. It has always been there, and it still happens, and we have recent examples.
Now, and a final question, any final thoughts you would like to leave us, Pierre, before we end the conversation?
Yeah, I think going back on the, we mentioned a lot of these trends, the business outcome that you can get from the digital transformation. I think every CIO and even C-suites have the digital transformation, IoT transformation top of the agenda, and I think they're right, because if you're not innovating, if you're not executing at a pace fast enough, you have a big risk of being disrupted. And the business outcomes outweighs the risk. So you must go there, but you must go there with the right assessment of risk and the right solutions. And especially in those IoT environments, that's where you need a partner. You need also, I mentioned, to work in project management mode with multidisciplinary team, but you also need to work with a project management with all sets of partners coming from different categories. The new telco, IT services and professional, specialized consultants, and also vendors, specialist and network vendors. And this is where, especially in those IoT environments and mission critical environments, Alcatel can help you with our industry-specific solutions, because we can help you build a multi-level security strategy where you can protect at every layer of the infrastructure, from the individual user to those IoT devices, which are very sensitive and easily hackable, and we can protect them up to the network layer itself. So encourage those leaders to accelerate their transformation roadmap. And for this, one of the common roadblocks that we need to address together is to not forget what I call the technical debt, right? Sometimes the network obsolescence, for instance, that has not been upgraded, that is not future-proof ready, can be the main roadblock to automation, provided the business value that you're looking for. So I encourage you to look at it too, and we're happy to help.
Now, Pierre, thank you very much for taking your time to be on the show.
Thanks, Brian. It's been a pleasure.
Now, we've been speaking to Pierre Samson, the Senior Vice President, Asia Pacific at Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise on Biztech's Enterprise Technology Show. I'm Brian Fernandez. This video will be on our Facebook and LinkedIn sites, as well as our website, www.biztech.asia. Please subscribe and like to our various platforms. Thanks a lot for tuning in.